Are you a remote worker or a digital creator in Nigeria? Come close. This session is for you. And we are going to be discussing how the new Nigerian Tax Act affects you as someone who works for international companies or have international clients while operating from Nigeria. Under the provisions of the new Nigerian Tax Act, you working for international companies expected to register with your state tax authority and obtain a tax identification number if you don't already have, to be able to remit your taxes. And this is where it gets very interesting. Nigeria is going into tax treaties with several foreign organizations, and if the client you work with is currently in those countries where those tax treaties are signed or are active, of course, companies you work with abroad will have to present your data or your information to the country in Nigeria where you reside. The Nigerian law when it comes to personal income tax has to do with the residency principle. And this is what the residency principle means. The residency principle means you have to pay tax where you are resident, not where you work. For instance, let's assume we all know how Abuja and Nasarawa are very close at the Maraba axis or the Masaka axis. And then when it comes to Lagos, Lagos and Ogun State are very close at Ojudubega side. So let's assume you are staying in Ojudubega or you are staying in Masaka and you are working in Lagos for Ojudubega or you are working in Abuja from Masaka. The tax law said you should pay your personal income tax based on where you are resident. So if you are staying in Ojudubega and you are working in Lagos, you are going to pay your personal income tax to Ogun State. And if you are working in Abuja but you stay in Masaka, you are going to pay your personal income tax to Nasarawa State where you stay. And this is what has been going on, and this is becoming very interesting because digital creators and freelancers, of course, and remote workers have been incorporated in the tax law now, and then their earn from foreign countries are currently now taxable at this rate we written on the board. But then we are going to proceed practically to move you to the board as we proceed in this session to show you how this your foreign income is going to be taxed. According to McKinsey, from 2020 when the COVID began, many companies in Africa were introduced to remote and hybrid work. And as at mid 2021, over 70% of companies operating the tech space, finance and other sectors had moved to remote or hybrid form of work. And then according to the World Economic Forum, over 92% of jobs by 2033 will be remote or hybrid jobs. And that is where the new Nigerian Tax Act is aiming at, where people who work for foreign organizations will be taxed so that the revenue generated by states and of course generally Nigeria will increase, so that the running of the country and then of course liquidity of the country to be able to take on infrastructure and capital projects will be higher. So if you are a remote worker watching me right now, or you are a digital creator, influencer or digital entrepreneur, so to say, you are expected to visit your state tax office to register and obtain a tax identification number, because in the coming weeks or the coming months that will become very important to you to process or carry out some information or process some documents in Nigeria. I'm going to be moving you to the board where we are going to be calculating what you have to pay. For instance, if you earn in foreign currency or if you work for foreign organization and you are residing in Nigeria. Again, this is not what we're supposed to run away from, because the tax treaties Nigeria is signing with all these foreign organizations or foreign countries will actually affect this, because the foreign countries may present your data or your information and record of your earnings to the appropriate channel, appropriate tax office, or of course the CBN when the need arises. So what you need to do is to stay put, pay attention as we move you to the board where we're going to be calculating and showing you exactly what you have to pay to the Nigerian government as a foreign worker, freelancer or remote worker based on the new graduating rate for personal income tax payment. So we are here now on this board and we're going to be looking at what you are going to pay as a freelancer, a digital creator or a remote worker working for a company abroad. So based on the new tax law, we have for your first 800,000, they are going to charge you 0%. the next 2.2 million 15%, the next 9 million 18%, the next 13 million 21%, the next 25 million 23%, and then anything above 50 million is going to be charged at 25% annual rate. But then we are going to be explaining and calculating this thing in detail, assuming you are a digital worker which earns $20,000 per year, and then of course converting it to naira at the rate of 1,500, you are going to be earning 30 million. So this is what we are going to be calculating. So we are going to be flipping this board to calculate, for instance, if you earn this amount, the tax, estimated tax you are expected to pay. So you need to stay with us. I will flip this board. Please snap this or record this and keep in your phone, because these are the rates we are going to be using to calculate your taxes. Let me explain to you how this payee computation table works. If you have screenshotted or saved that part where we presented the payee tax graduating rate tax table, then this should be very simple and very important for you. But then if you didn't save the graduating rate table, I advise you to rewind the video to bit backward to be able to see the graduating rate table that we presented on the screen. So we are doing this computation with assumption that you earn $20,000 annually from the foreign company you provide services for, either as an employee or a freelancer. So let's assume you earn $20,000 and we are converting the $20,000 at a rate of 1,500 based on the exchange rate, and that means in naira you'll be earning 30 million naira. Before the new tax law, there was a relief called consolidated relief allowance, which you use to reduce your taxable amount. Like that consolidated relief allowance is supposed to be used to reduce this your 30 million, so that you come to an amount that we use to apply this tax rate. But then that consolidated relief allowance have been removed based on the new tax law. But then they introduce another relief allowance called rent relief. But that rent relief, you can only relieve a 20% of your rent up to 500,000 naira. So let's assume your rent for the year is 10 million naira. Your rent for the year is 10 million naira, and you want to get a consolidated relief allowance on rent, which is 20%. 10 million naira, 20% of 10 million naira is 2 million, and that is already more than 500,000. So the only portion of the relief that will be allowed is 500,000. So that is the only relief introduced in the new tax law. But then let's proceed to the computation. The first 800,000 naira is charged at 0%, which is zero. This is your 30 million naira you're supposed to earn. Then the next 2,200,000 at 15%. So 2,200,000 from this 30 million as 15% is 330,000 naira. So when you less this 2 million from this 30 million naira, what will be the balance you'll be left with is 27,800,000. And then the next 9 million at 18%. So you charge 18% on 9 million, you give us 1,620,000 naira. So if you reduce this 9 million from the balance that was left here, what will be left is 18.8 million naira. Then they said the tax law said the next 13 million at 21%, which 21% of 13 million will give us 2,730,000 naira. So if you less this 13 million from this balance of 18.8 million, what will be left is 5.8 million naira. But then if you look at this, the next 25 million at 25%, if you notice this 5.8 million naira now is not up to 25 million naira. So what do? We just charge this 25% on this 5.8 million, which we have done in bracket here, and it's giving us 1,450,000 naira. So when we add 330,000 naira, 1,620,000, 2,730,000 and 1,450,000, it gives us 6,130,000 naira. So this is your estimated taxes you are supposed to pay on this 30 million naira you are earning from your foreign company as a freelancer or a remote worker. So if you notice the last point, which is 6.6, which has to be the next 50 million naira based on the graduating tax table I presented to you, we didn't recognize it because our income did not get to that threshold. Our income stopped at 25 million naira. So there are other allowances like pension, NSITF, National Housing Fund, and many other allowances that may be granted to you if you actually remit those statutory compliance to the respective regulatory bodies. If you actually remit them, you can use that to reduce your taxable income from this 30 million naira. So this is the graduating tax table. So for instance, if you earn $20,000 and at the rate of 1,500, this is the computation of your personal income tax. So according to the new tax Nigerian Tax Act, you are supposed to register for TIN with your respective state tax office where you reside based on the residency rule I explained earlier, and remit this tax to your respective tax office, because based on the treaties, the tax treaties with those foreign companies, they can have the records of your earnings or your income from those tax or from those foreign companies when their demand for them or the need for them arises. And Nigeria is going towards a stage where most applications, for instance, application for car papers and many other applications, required to produce your tax clearance certificates. And if you don't have a tax clearance certificate, you'll not be able to do most of the registration and of course most of the documentation in Nigeria. So if you are a foreign someone that work for a foreign company, freelancer, a digital creator, digital entrepreneur, or remote worker, this is what you need to consider, because this is a representation of what you'll be paying to the government for taxes if you work as a foreign digital creator or the rest. So this is very important. Take this into cognizance, register for your taxes, and this is what you do. But then there are other relief allowances that can be chargeable with on this to reduce your personal income tax chargeable for tax purpose. So you can reach out to us with the number displaying on your screen to be able to help you sort out your personal income tax issues or your company income tax issues. So we still request that you subscribe, like, and turn on your notification for several important informations like this around tax and your finance to help you as an individual and as a company thrive. See you in the next video.